It's 21 to 1, 3AW, and on this date, in 1967, a very significant day in commercial radio, for radio generally in this country, because one Mike Walsh is credited as being the first person to take an open line call on Sydney radio, on Australian radio for that matter, 45 years ago, and he was the host of that program. So began Talkback Radio. Or did it? Simon Owens, good morning.
Good morning, Andrew. Morning, Mark. Morning.
What's the story? You have a little bit of a variant on this, don't you?
There is, and I actually think, because I've mentioned this before with you guys on air as well, but I actually think I may have got my story just slightly twisted last time by naming 3AW as opposed to another Sydney station. But here's the thing. Tues in Sydney, apparently on this day, were the ones to introduce Talkback Radio. And it was Mike Walsh who's credited as being the first man in Australian radio to do Talkback live on air.
Yes.
Bruce tells a story, just before I get to the correction of that, but Bruce tells a story of Norman Banks doing I'm on Your Side, where he would take Talkback, but not actually put the calls to air.
Yeah, this is what I remember. See, yes. Earlier than 1967.
Yes.
But you would, and I remember in the 50s, Happy Hammond, may I just interject here?
Yep.
Happy Hammond doing breakfast at 3AW, later on to Channel 9 as the children's host, and he would have a moment where he'd say, I've got a prize, a lovely prize here now for Mrs. Johnson of Elstering. Hello, Mrs. Johnson, I've got her on the line here. And he'd hold the phone, obviously, he'd have the phone there, and you'd hear, now, Mrs. Johnson, have you married? And you got, and you're married with, you got children? Yeah, 4. Oh, you've been busy, Mrs. Johnson, oh, haven't you? And you'd hear a bit of a giggle down the phone. But it was just a voice coming,
yes.
And he talked for about, it wasn't Talkback Radio, but it sort of was. He was doing the best he could.
Well, apparently with Norman Banks, I'm on Your Side, the one that Bruce talks about, it was a similar thing. And Norman Banks, here, the Neil Mitchell of his day, the defender of public good, and he would say, oh, we're taking your call. I can't do a Norman Banks impersonation, by the way, but he'd say, we're taking your calls, and we've got Margaret on the line. Now, what's the problem, Margaret? You've got a complaint about your council. Yes.
Wonderful.
Oh no, I understand completely. Oh yes, well we must get that fixed for you. Who is your council? Oh yes, it's Brighton or whatever, and so on it would go. But he would, yes, never hear the Talkback caller themselves go to air.
That's what I can remember too.
Yes.
That sort of Talkback. He'd do 2 or 3 in the course of a normal shift.
Yes.
He wouldn't do it always that way, but he would feature some people on air in a way.
Yes. Well, so that was sort of Talkback before it became the Talkback that we know today. But on this day in history, Mike Walsh on 2SM came on air and took Talkback. Actually put a caller to air and spoke to them, and you could hear both sides of the conversation, which is where we are today. But there's another Darren Hitch story, which I'll tell you in a sec as well. But with 2SM and Mike Walsh, he went to air on this day, but Ormsby Wilkins came along on 2UE, and I think I'd previously said it was 3AW, but no, Ormsby was still on 2UE at this time.
In the 60s, he used to be up in Sydney.
Yes. So he came on air on 2UE at midnight. When it became legal to take Talkback calls, he came on air and did an hour of Talkback at midnight on 2UE. Just to defeat, just to rub the noses of Mike Walsh and 2SM, rub their noses in the dirt and say, we beat you to it.
I knew there was some story, and you have told it before, but it's worth retelling, I think.
Yes.
Of just how competitive it can be in radio. You know, particularly in Sydney, you know, John Laws, when he was playing records in the 50s, he would get sailors, American sailors, to bring in the latest records, because in those days, the new Ricky Nelson or the new Gene Pitney record, whatever it was, would take months before it was released out here. And so he would have people he knew were travelling backwards and forwards on American cargo ships or airline stewards to bring out the latest records.
Yeah.
And he would play them. But what they were doing, Bob Rogers at other radio stations in Sydney, they were taping the radio station that John Laws was on, taping the Gene Pitney record that he played, and then saying, now, guess what, on their station, we got the brand new Gene Pitney just released in the States. So
isn't
what
that
John Laws would do is say, there'd be a gap like, when Liberty Valance rode to town. This is a John Laws special. The women folk would hide. They'd hide.
Fabulous.
You're listening to John Laws. He used to put these voice inserts in between gaps in the songs.
Oh, he was a clever man.
That's how vicious it was.
That is marvellous.
I'll stick it up and wear it.
I hadn't heard that. I'll have to make a note of that story. I love that.
Mind you, when you watch The Insiders now on Channel 2 of a Sunday morning with Barry Cassidy, and they do an interview with the top Polly, I've noticed how when they have the Polly on screen, they have insiders written so much around the Polly. There's no way of any other station of blocking it out.
Yes.
Would it be 5 times on the screen?
It's about that, yeah.
You know, for 2 years I produced Ernie Sigley's afternoon program here at AW from 2001, 2002. Was Ernie's producer. And when Ernie had to do a news-related interview, you know, Ernie had this great style of just chatting to people, and it was lovely. And people would be chatting, and he'd
Very
be going,
over the fence, wasn't it?
He'd be going, oh, yeah. And just sort of casual conversation. When he was doing a newsworthy interview, he'd grunt and moan and make noises right the way through it, so that no matter how hard they tried, the guys in the newsroom
get a clean feed.
had to put Ernie to air in the news. And he just did it for fun, just for a laugh. But I love that. Now, the Darren Hinch story regarding Talkback Radio, the way Talkback Radio had to be done, because everybody has to be identified and we must know who they are. From those Mike Walsh and Ormsby Wilkins days of Talkback Radio starting out, they had to actually, a caller would ring in to the station, the producer would have to take their phone number down and call them back in order to make it legal to put that person to work. Yes, so they had to have records kept of everybody who had been on the station and what their phone number was.
Oh.
So
it was like a cumbersome system, wasn't it? I didn't realise. That was how early Talkback went.
Yeah, that's how it was right up until the 1980s, apparently, when Darren Hinch decided, with, I think it was Mike Fraser, his producer at the time, decided that, why do we do this? Oh, let's just not do it anymore. We're just going to take the calls and put them straight to air. Ring me now. And so people rang in on whatever the old 3AW phone number is. You'll remember it,
was it 9329?
329-7522.
No, that was the switchboard number.
Oh, that was whatever.
329-7566 maybe? I don't know. Whatever the old talkback number was. Ring us now, we'll put you to air. And Darren, even right through his entire show in the 1980s, people don't remember this, never used to refer to the callers by name. The producer would say, "You're next." Okay, when Darren says hello, it's you. All right, we're taking calls. Hello, and the caller would come on air. He never asked their name. It's not the way we do it now. So, hello,
and suburb and all that.
Yeah. So it was just your name. It was just hello, and the caller would come on.
God,
that was how Darren did Talkback. It was ring in. We're just going to put you to air. And of course, it's one of those things. What he did was illegal, but
in the end, it was a ridiculous system.
Oh, it was silly, and the country had outgrown it.
Yeah, I'll say.
So there you go. So that's how Darren changed Talkback forever.
And still changing things in his own way.
Yes, he is.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Simon. It's always good to see you in the studio.
Pleasure.
Nice to have you along, and those stories and memories of early Talkback radio.
It's good stuff, isn't it?
It is. 13 to 1 on 3AW.